everybody. I'm Delegate Ken Plum. Welcome to our show, Virginia Report. Those of you who watch my show regularly know that no more important topic than I speak about than the public education system. And we're going to talk about it again tonight. We're going to talk specifically about its financing and the opportunities that Fairfax has now to enhance its quality of schools through expanding the financial support for it. My guest tonight is one that needs no introduction to Reston residents, Pat Hynes, our school board member and school board chairman.
Hi,
Pat.
Ken. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us again on Virginia Report. We spent some time this past year talking about the challenges of balancing the budget for Fairfax schools. We're up to now 180,000 children, is that right?
187,000, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's an incredible number.
10th largest in the country.
Yeah. And so all those programs, just the fact that you've got so many, one of the largest bus fleets in the country.
The largest bus
The
fleet
largest
in the
bus
country.
fleet in the
Right,
country.
yeah.
Couple hundred school buildings.
Yes, a couple hundred. Our physical footprint in the county is actually the equivalent of 4 Pentagons.
4 Pentagons.
Our capital is really large, yeah.
So there's little wonder then that when you add all that up, it has a price tag to it.
Sure, yeah. $2.6 billion right now is our operating budget annually.
And against the Fairfax County budget then, we're half the budget?
A little over half.
A little over half. And Fairfax residents, of course, place a premium on quality schools. And I think what we saw in the past year's discussion has been that the community is supportive of making sure that we have not just good schools, that we have excellent schools.
Sure, absolutely. I think the people of Fairfax County want us to have a world-class school system, and we do. And so it's not just kind of reading, writing, and arithmetic here. We want really great programs.
Yeah.
And we've noticed over the last 9 years or so, because of difficult financial times, we've had to make cuts every year because revenues have not kept pace with growing needs, and as a result we're actually spending $1,000 less per child in real dollars now than we were in 2008. And so those cuts are real, and they've come because we've frozen teacher pay several times and we've raised class size several times. So we found ourselves this year at a point where that way of doing business is just not sustainable. We need to start turning the corner. We had 200 vacant classroom positions at the beginning of the school year this year, and that is unheard of in Fairfax County. And we have now gotten feedback from principals and teachers that teachers are leaving for surrounding districts because we have not kept up with their market value.
With all we say about how great Fairfax is, how great our schools are, and so on, teachers can actually get a better deal by going neighboring counties and
They
teach.
can, yeah. Our teachers can go to Arlington, and if they're in mid-career, they can make $10,000, $15,000 more a year, some of them even 20. And what happens also is because Fairfax County is expensive to live in, we have a lot of teachers who live in the western suburbs and western counties, and if our pay is not significantly better than what they could make out there, well, it makes sense for them to actually work where they live already. And so we're losing teachers kind of at both ends.
And people who move here to Fairfax with an expectation of the school system find their children sometimes in pretty large classes.
They do, and parents are just, and particularly in the Hunter Mill district, which I represent, I would say we have particularly some schools in Vienna where the elementary classes have gotten quite large. Over 30 is typical. And when people come here thinking, I've come for the schools, and then the reality is we've got overcrowded classrooms, and my child has been in an overcrowded classroom, for every year of his or her elementary life, they begin to wonder, is this really the great school system that we thought we had? And we can't. So one of the things that we're able to do this year, because we did get some extra funding from the state, thank you, and we really got a shot in the arm from our local funders, the Board of Supervisors, is that we're able to cap elementary class sizes going forward at 30, which is hardly a lofty goal. I mean, I'm an elementary teacher, and it should be lower than that. Sure. But that will help, I think, because it'll provide more staffing at our elementary schools. And then the other thing we're able to do going forward for the next school year is to invest $40 million in our teacher scale so that we can get our teacher salaries halfway to market average. So those are really important reinvestments in the system.
And we need to say in this discussion that while we talk about Fairfax County and the Fairfax County school system, the state has a role in this too. And the state, on the average, should support a school division 50-50 on the average across the school divisions based upon the local ability to pay. And in Fairfax, of course, we have a higher ability to pay, but we have not at the state level met our average of 50-50. In fact, it's more like 60-40, with the locality picking up 60%, and that trickles down to Fairfax, where you do not get your, even with your ability to pay, you don't get the comparable amount you should be getting, because the state has reneged on its monies too.
Right, and you know better than I do what the local composite index, which is kind of where you're talking about the local ability to pay, is really all about. But my understanding is that it's based on criteria that are just really not relevant anymore in a lot of ways. And so we look around Fairfax County, and maybe as a whole, we have a high per household income, but we also have pockets of poverty, we have pockets of need, and that's growing. 28% of our students qualify for free and reduced meals.
Correct.
So we have needs that poorer counties have as well.
Sure. Yeah, the composite index takes into account the ability to pay, but there's a lot of argument about whether it does a good job of doing that. For example, in Fairfax, while you may have a low percentage of poverty in the county, when you apply that to 1 million people, it turns out to be a whole lot of people.
Yep.
Yeah, and so as a consequence, percentages don't work very well. When the county is 40,000 people, that's one issue, but when it's 1 million people and you apply a 10% number, gives you a totally different number to deal with.
Right, and I think fundamentally the using household income as a way to measure local ability to pay is problematic, because the counties can't tax income.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that doesn't help.
And that's the other thing to realize then, that local governments are limited in their taxing authority, and that brings us to the subject for tonight. How is it that we could expand the ability of Fairfax to raise monies through sources other than the real estate tax? Because some people now in the county are paying as much tax as they're paying mortgage if they've been around here a long time. And that's not a tenable situation to be in either. So the county school board, working with Fairfax County supervisors, have a proposal that we need to consider.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think the shot in the arm that the school system is going to get this year is coming at a cost of a 4-cent increase in property taxes for homeowners, and that is also not sustainable.
Right.
And we know that it's only the beginning of the reinvestment that we have to make in the school system. We've got more to do. So one of the options that counties have is a meals tax. Counties don't have a lot of options for local revenue generating. And the meals tax has been in conversation for a while. Last time it came up for a referendum vote was back in the early 90s. So it's before any student in Fairfax County Public Schools right now was even born. So I think it's time to reconsider it. What it would do, the referendum that will be placed on the ballot in November for everyone to vote on, would charge a 4% meals tax, and that would be on all prepared foods. And it would be the same meals tax that you pay if you go into town of Herndon or town of Vienda, Arlington, Alexandria, Washington, Leesburg. Most of the surrounding districts have it. It's a little bit lower in Herndon and Vienna than 4%, but everywhere else it is 4%. DC, it's 10%. Mm-hmm. And what it would do, the restaurants would pass it through. The restaurants don't pay it. It would bring in roughly almost $100 million a year to the county's operating funds. 70% of that earmarked for the schools automatically. The other 30% the county would divide between county services, capital improvement, and property tax relief for homeowners. And so the benefit of that to the school system is, that $70 million every year is the margin that we need, at least over the next few years, to continue to reinvest and turn the corner on the school system's revenue.
So the point we want to make clear to people tonight is that when they go to vote on this November, there will be a question about whether Fairfax County should participate or place a 4% meals tax, prepared food, that's at your restaurants, and that money would then be applied to the schools and county services, as you mentioned. Voters get to decide this.
Yes.
And that's the other thing about most taxes are imposed by the legislative body. This tax is imposed by a referendum, and it gets to be debated pretty strongly.
It does, and that's a little bit of a handicap that counties have as opposed to cities and towns.
Cities and towns, right.
Where your town council, your city council can pass this.
Yep.
So it has to get through that referendum process. And oh yes, the debate has already started. And one of the things that I'm very glad the Board of Supervisors is planning to do is to take, I think it's about $3 million of that annual revenue and send it right back to the restaurants to help them with the administrative costs,
right.
because they're collecting these taxes for us and sending it in, and that is a cost to them. you know, the relationships between the schools and local eateries are really important. If you've ever been to a Dining for Dollars for your local school, you know how important those relationships are. We don't want this to be a fight between schools and restaurants. That doesn't make sense.
Right. And it's really, it's not really an issue between the schools and the restaurants. It's an issue that this is our governance structure. This is the way it's set up.
Right.
Fairfax County has no option but to conduct a referendum.
Right.
And they don't reasonably have other options for taxation. The property tax needs relief, not increases.
Right.
And here's the way we get to do it. So it would be my hope that there would be an understanding that restaurateurs, the people who serve prepared food, will be paid for the collection of the tax, just as your local store of any kind that collects the sales tax is paid for the collection of the tax.
Right.
Same would happen, but that the restaurant doesn't pay the tax.
Right.
The users of the restaurant. So when people see the signs, no meals tax in the local restaurant, a discussion with the manager to have an understanding that no one's asking the restaurant to pay the meals tax, it would be the local participants.
I think that's fair, yes. And we have seen some of those signs, and that is my response when I see that. And I ask, may I please speak to the manager? And I explain my understanding of what the meals tax is, how it won't cost them anything, and how important it is to the schools and to the county as a whole to have that that little bit of diversity in our revenue stream. It's very important to us. And then, you know, I also point out, look around, look at the town of Vienna, for example. Every time I go through the town, there's another restaurant opening, and they don't seem to be struggling at all under the meals tax. Same is true for Fairfax City and Herndon, Arlington, Alexandria. I mean, you know, wonderful restaurants.
They've had meals tax for years and years and years. There hasn't been a limitation on the number of restaurants, how many people go to Arlington for the restaurants, and Alexandria especially.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not new, and it's a surprise, I find, to people to understand that if they drive over into Herndon, they pay a meals tax.
Yeah, you don't think about it. The only time I've ever noticed it is if you buy a sort of a small item like a cup of coffee at Starbucks. You buy it in the county and then you buy it in the town of Vienna. You might notice, because it's something you buy all the time, there's a few more cents on there.
Right.
But it doesn't stop me from buying a cup of coffee in Vienna, you know. And I think eating out is well, it's not a luxury, but it's a choice. It's not something that we have to do. So in that way, it's not a regressive tax. And we know that roughly 30% of the meals bought in Fairfax County are actually bought by people who don't live in the county. So that's a way for us to collect revenue from, you know, those who work and travel through.
Mm-hmm. Correct. What do you expect by way of a campaign to inform voters? Because I think a lot of people will be surprised to know that this is coming.
Yeah, right. So the education piece is the biggest one. And so right now there is a campaign forming, and it includes the teachers unions and the PTA and elected officials who, you know, on our own time are pushing for this because it's important. So there's a fundraising effort, there's an education effort, and I was just at a meeting last night, and it's going very well. And I think people will begin to see phone banking and canvassing and visibility events at farmers markets and festivals and football games, and, you know, there are a lot of folks who got geared up for the school budget conversation this year. I was so pleased with the community engagement. It really was a conversation about community values.
Oh, it was wonderful.
It was. And so those same folks are raring to go to help get the meals tax because they know that that is our budget advocacy, probably for the next couple or 3 years, that we won't get another property tax increase, and really we shouldn't. So this is it. Between now and November, if you want to do what's best for the school system, get involved in the meals tax campaign.
Yeah. The choices are that the meals tax will not reduce the property tax, but it will keep the property tax from accelerating.
Exactly.
If your objective is to maintain the quality of the schools.
Right.
And I don't think anybody wants to see that go away.
No, and that was the conversation we had to finally have this year. Was, you know, we've frozen teacher pay, we've raised class size, we've made significant cuts to central office, and so we're at a point where we don't even want to talk about cutting student programs, but we were at a point where we had no choice, just with the revenue that was coming in. It would change fundamentally who we are as a school system. And people rose to the occasion and had that conversation.
Yeah. So in terms of options, again, it seems to be the best option, and I don't know anyone who's come forward with another option as to how to raise the funding.
Right, people have ideas, but every idea comes up, it seems like, once you understand what state law allows and what other options would actually bring in terms of revenue, this is the best.
Yeah, good. Well, the involvement of local PTAs is critical, and I'm sure that they have in the past, and in this conversation this past year about being able to define the needs within the school, they've been critical in terms of doing that.
Sure, yeah, and we have great leadership in the Fairfax County Council PTAs right now, great advocacy leadership, and I've been hearing from, incoming PTA presidents in my district saying, how can I help? So they will be on board.
Now, I don't have children in school. I mean, that's a common response because what is it now in Fairfax? How many people don't have children in school?
About 75% of the residents do not have a kid in school.
But gee whiz, we live in a community whose quality of life in the future could be dependent upon the children who are here.
Sure.
So we all pay for educating each other's children.
I think a great school system is important for the whole community in so many ways. It's the future, but it's also, just thinking selfishly, it's very clear that my property values depend on the quality of the school down the street.
Oh, absolutely.
So we all benefit. Businesses come here for the schools, families come here for the schools. We continue to be a thriving local economy because we have a great school system.
Now, how can we be assured that you've cut the budget as much as you could?
Right.
Can I be assured as a voter that they haven't wrung this thing out at cost cutting?
Well, we have answered that question every possible way that we could over the last 3 or 4 years as we've made the cuts. And we're always happy to continue to answer that question. Anyone who wants more information about it, please contact me and I'll give you everything we have. We have an independent audit committee, the school board does, and we have an independent auditor general. So we're always looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. We're definitely always working on that. But also, we've had, the other thing that we did in the last year was after 7 or 8 years of cuts, we had the superintendent put together a citizen advisory committee, and that committee combed through the whole operating budget and came up with a list of 100 possible cuts. So they looked everywhere for savings and gave the school board this list of 100 items that we could work with. So I really feel like $1,000 less per child in real dollars in 2008, that's real. Those cuts have been real.
When you take $1,000 less per student and you do 188,000 students, that's a lot of money.
Right, I know.
Yeah.
Can you do that math?
I can't do that math real quickly, but it's a bunch.
It is, and that's how much we're short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will there be a speakers bureau or some kind of an arrangement whereby local associations and groups want to hear about the meals tax and how we got here?
Thank you for asking. That was something we were just putting together last night at our meeting. And yes, absolutely, we would like anyone to welcome speakers to speak about it to your civic association, your neighborhood association, whatever organization you have. And then we would love to have electeds and community leaders who people know and respect to come and speak on behalf of the meals tax.
Sure. For folks who live in our community, may not be directly affiliated with the schools and so on, who wonder how our schools are governed, you are yourself an elected official. We need to point that out to folks.
Right. Yeah.
You run for office.
That's right, and I just did. Just started the first year of my second 4-year term. Yes, we are elected. There are 12 of us on the school board. 9 of us represent magisterial districts. I represent Hunter Mill, which is about 130,000 residents. And then we have 3 at-large members on the board.
And the fact that you've been reelected, you went back to the voters and you were held accountable for what was spent and not spent in that first round. Yeah. And as I recall your campaign, you made it clear that we needed to make a larger investment in our schools, and the voters spoke when they reelected you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are differences of opinion on everything we do, but I do feel confident that the vast majority of people in the Hunter Mill district want a great school system, and they understand what that means, and they take to heart the needs of the school system and want to help.
Yeah. Now, back when the Chamber of Commerce wanted to develop some monies for tourism and put a couple % on tax on, the business community came to our rescue and, of course, promoted that idea.
Right.
Do you expect the business community in general is going to take a position on the referendum?
My sense right now is that the business community is somewhat divided on it. There are some restaurants that have taken a strong position against it, and so the chambers that they belong to I think, feel some pressure to go along with that. But my impression from talking to businesses and business leaders in the community is that there is not a full-on push against it. I think that if you talk to realtors, they'll tell you how important good schools are to property values. You know, they understand that this is good for their business as well.
Absolutely.
So
people buy their houses based upon the school attendance area.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Good. Well, if we were to summarize then for people who are facing this prospect of this vote in November, if they have children in school, it's a little more obvious. It's going to be a direct payoff. But people, residents of the community at large, what kinds of things could we say to them about a meals tax?
Well, I would say that the school system continues to need some reinvestment to turn the corner after almost a decade of underinvestment. And we are very grateful to the homeowners for being willing to dig down and give that extra 4 cents for the next year so that we can begin to do that reinvesting. But we know that it's not going to be enough. And we know that we can't keep going back to homeowners for that extra margin every year that we need to invest in the school system. And the meals tax gives us that margin. And it will, again, 30% of it will be paid by people who don't even live in the county. And also it won't cost the restaurants anything. And there's no evidence that it will hurt their business. So to me, it's just a very smart way to diversify and stabilize our revenue base and give the schools the continued shot in the arm that we need.
Right. And I think the additional point I would add to it would be that it's not a new idea.
Right.
It's been around. I don't know how long Vienna and Herndon have had a meals tax, but it's been a long time.
Yes.
Years and years.
Yes.
And cities and towns are able to apply that tax on their own action. The referendum in a county, a meals tax can only be applied with a referendum. For whatever reason that got put in the state code, it's there and it seems like it's going to stay, but this is our opportunity then as citizens to stand up and speak up.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah,
yep.
Good. So it's November is the election date. Beyond this, what's happening in the schools that we need to be aware of?
Well, we have a lot of great things happening in the school system. We have, our Fairfax County Public Schools is participating through our superintendent in a statewide conversation about a portrait or profile of a graduate, because we know that we want to have a better idea of what our students should know and be able to do when they leave us at 18 or 19 years old. And we want to be able to assess that in a way that makes sense. We want to move to a more rational accountability system and assessment system than what we've all lived under for the last 20 years. So I'm so excited that Fairfax County is participating in that.
Providing a leadership part, really.
Yes, we are. I think we're very fortunate to have Dr. Karen Garza as our superintendent. We've just offered her another 4-year contract and I'm very glad that she's been willing to take that. She is a national leader and also just a great leader of the school system. I was just over at Terracet Elementary School here in Reston yesterday, and you probably know that the roof of the new building is almost completed, and the roof is going to be this amazing outdoor garden. There are about 4 feet of soil on top of the roof, so they can actually use it as an outdoor classroom space. I'm so excited to see that.
The principal was on our show and talked about that.
Yeah.
So, yes,
Lindsay's great. I know, yeah. And I would say generally, I just see, particularly in Reston, because we have such a nice pyramid with South Lakes High School being where most of the kids who live in Reston end up going, that we have a lot of coordination among the principals, a lot of project-based learning coming along. So I'm just excited to be out in the schools and see what the teachers and the kids are doing.
Pat Hynes, member of the school board from Fundamental District and chair of the school board, we thank you for being with us on Virginia Report. And ladies and gentlemen, it's November. An issue on the ballot will be, shall Fairfax County impose a meals tax? I'm going to vote yes, and I hope you'll vote yes as well. It's important to the long-term quality of our system. We have to make that investment. It's no longer realistic that we depend totally upon the property tax. We have to diversify the way in which we invest in our schools. This is the way to do it. Thank you for being with us on Virginia Report. Hope you join us next time. Good night.